The first time I realized my parents had erased me from the family, I was standing underneath a 12-foot banner that said, "The Brooks family, 50 years of love, sacrifice, and legacy." There were 27 photographs printed across it. My parents on their wedding day, my younger brother Lucas at graduation, Lucas with his wife, Lucas holding each of his children in the hospital, my parents at Christmas, my parents at the lake, my parents standing beside Lucas when he opened his restaurant, my cousins, my grandparents. Even my father's old dog appeared in one photograph. I didn't, not once. I was still staring at the banner when my mother walked up beside me, carrying a cream envelope. "You came," she said. There was no hug, no smile, just surprise. I was invited. Well, she glanced toward the ballroom doors. "Since you're here, there is one thing you can do." She handed me the envelope. Inside was an invoice from the hotel. Outstanding event balance, $18,740. At the bottom, someone had written in blue ink, "Natalie will handle final payment." I looked at my mother. She looked back at me without embarrassment. "The event coordinator needs it settled before 10. I slowly looked up at the family banner again. "You removed me from the entire display." Her mouth tightened. "Natalie, please don't start. You printed 50 years of family history, and somehow I was never born. You chose to distance yourself. I stopped paying your bills. To us, there wasn't much difference." That sentence told me more about my family than the previous 15 years combined. My name is Natalie Brooks. I was 42 years old, and I worked as the director of operations for a commercial heating and cooling company in Charlotte, North Carolina. I negotiated contracts for a living. I managed budgets. I dealt with vendors who occasionally forgot what they had agreed to until I showed them their own signatures. I knew the difference between a misunderstanding and a decision, and by the time my parents erased me from their anniversary celebration, I finally understood which one I was dealing with. Welcome back to Closest Strangers. Stories of family betrayal, quiet justice, and the people who were supposed to love you. If you've ever been the responsible one, the ATM, the fixer, the strong one, this story is for you. Because before my parents removed me from the family story, they had spent almost 15 years making sure I financed it. I grew up in a house where photographs mattered. My mother, Marlene, documented everything. Birthdays, first days of school, Christmas mornings, Little League, prom, family vacations. Every year, sometime between Christmas and New Year's, she would sit at the dining room table with stacks of printed photographs and build another album. They were thick navy books with gold corners. Each one had a year embossed on the spine: 1992, 1993, 1994. By the time I graduated high school, an entire shelf in our living room contained the Brooks family story. Mom used to say, "Pictures prove who showed up." I believed her. I believed almost everything my parents told me back then. Lucas was 3 years younger than me. From the beginning, we were assigned different roles. I was the child who knew better. Lucas was the child who meant well. If I forgot to take chicken out of the freezer, Mom asked how I could be so irresponsible. If Lucas forgot to turn in a school project, she called his teacher. When I got my first job at 16, Dad told me to save half my paycheck. When Lucas got his first job, Dad helped him buy upgraded speakers for his car. Nobody announced that Lucas was the favorite. Families rarely do. They create the position through exceptions. At 21, I graduated from college with a business administration degree and $21,600 in student loans. My parents attended my graduation. Mom took 73 photographs. I know because she told everyone. When Lucas graduated 4 years later, my parents threw a party for 80 people and gave him $7,500 toward a new truck because, as Dad said, he's starting his adult life. I was 25 by then. Apparently mine had already started without a ceremony. I wasn't bitter, not yet. I loved Lucas. He was funny, charming, impulsive, and very good at making people feel as if whatever mistake he had just made was temporary. For most of our 20s, I thought the difference between us was personality. I liked plans. Lucas liked possibilities. I liked knowing what something cost. Lucas liked knowing whether the monthly payment sounded manageable. I worked my way from purchasing assistant to facilities coordinator, then operations manager. Lucas bounced car sales, insurance, real estate, a small landscaping company with a friend, then restaurant management, then the idea that would eventually consume half the family. But before that happened, my parents began needing help. The first request came when I was 28. Dad called on a Tuesday night. Their property tax escrow had been recalculated. They were short $2,860. Just until my bonus, Dad said. I sent it. 3 months later, he repaid $1,000. Then Christmas came. Then their water heater failed. Nobody mentioned the remaining $1,860. I didn't either. The second request was Mom's car, $1,420. Then a roof insurance deductible, $3,750. Then they needed help with my grandmother's funeral travel expenses, $1,180. Then Lucas needed $4,000 because his landscaping partner had emptied their business account before disappearing. That one came through Mom. Natalie, he is humiliated. I didn't ask if he was humiliated. He can't make payroll. How much does he need? $4,000. Is it a loan? There was a pause. Does it have to be? I should have understood the system right then. Instead, I transferred the money. Lucas called me afterward. You saved me. No, I gave you $4,000. Same thing. It wasn't. But in my family, money began turning into emotion the moment it left my account. The more I gave, the less anyone remembered the amount. They only remembered that I had helped, which sounds flattering until helping becomes your permanent function. By 32, I had a separate spreadsheet called Family Support. I never showed it to anyone. It wasn't a revenge ledger. I tracked everything because I tracked everything. Date, amount, purpose. Whether it had been repaid, whether I considered it a gift, whether there had been an agreement. I even had a column titled Requested By because I started noticing that Lucas almost never asked me himself. Mom did. Dad did. Sometimes Lucas's wife, Kayla, did. They became his collection department. At the top of the spreadsheet, I had written one sentence. Generosity without records becomes mythology. That sentence came from my job. I had once watched a supplier insist our company owed $62,000 on an amended contract. Our records showed the amendment had never been approved. For 3 weeks, the supplier kept saying, but everyone understood. My boss, Helen, finally leaned across the conference table and said, understanding is what people claim when documentation disagrees with them. I never forgot it. Helen became one of the most important people in my adult life. She was 15 years older than me and had zero interest in family drama. When I once apologized for answering my mother's third call during a work dinner, Helen said, "Natalie, your family knows you have a job, right?" "Yes." "Then why are you the only person acting like they don't?" It was such a simple question that it irritated me for days. Because the answer was obvious. They called because I answered. They asked because I usually said yes. The first real shift happened when I was 34. Lucas decided he wanted to open a restaurant. Not a food truck, not a small takeaway place, a full sit-down restaurant. He had worked in restaurant management for about 18 months and believed the owners were doing everything wrong. According to Lucas, he understood customers better, labor better, menu pricing better, marketing better. The restaurant would be called Oak and Ember. He had a logo before he had financing. Mom loved the logo. Dad loved the concept. Kayla was pregnant with their first child, which somehow made the business sound more responsible instead of less. Lucas needed $85,000 to get started. He had $11,000. Dad offered $20,000 from retirement savings. Mom wanted me to invest $30,000, not lend, invest. I said no. That became our first serious family conflict about money. Mom called me selfish. Not directly. She said, "I just don't understand why somebody with your stability wouldn't want to help her brother build something." Dad said, "You spend your whole life working for companies. Lucas is trying to own something." Lucas said, "I'm not asking for charity. You're asking for $30,000 for equity in a business that doesn't exist." He laughed. "You always make everything sound stupid. I'm asking questions." Exactly. To Lucas, questions were a form of disloyalty. I did eventually give him $8,000. Not equity, not a loan, a one-time gift. I wrote him an email afterward. "I love you. This is the maximum amount I am contributing to Oak and Ember. I will not be responsible for future operating expenses, payroll, rent, taxes, vendor balances, or expansion. Please plan on that basis." Lucas called immediately. "Why would you write it like this?" "So we're clear." "We're family, Natalie." "Yes." "You make everything sound like a contract. Because 3 months from now, I don't want anyone remembering this differently." He was offended. I was right. Oak and Ember opened in March. The first 6 months looked successful. Instagram photos, weekend crowds, local food bloggers. Mom treated every good review as proof that Lucas had inherited some special business instinct nobody else possessed. At Thanksgiving, she toasted him. "To our entrepreneur." I was sitting across from him. Nobody toasted the person whose $8,000 had bought part of the kitchen equipment. That sounds petty. At the time, I told myself it was petty. The problem with repeatedly dismissing your own hurt as petty is that other people eventually learn to dismiss it too. By the second year, Oak and Ember was struggling. Food costs rose. Labor turnover was high. Lucas expanded the menu instead of shrinking it. He borrowed money, then borrowed more money to cover the first borrowing. I only knew pieces. He stopped giving details when I started asking numbers. Then Mom and Dad's financial problems accelerated. They were both approaching retirement, but still spending as if salaries would continue forever. They refinanced their house, bought a used motorhome for $46,000, joined a private social club because Dad said retirement should feel like finally living. Mom remodeled the downstairs bathroom. They started taking 2 vacations a year. And then, quietly, I became the missing line in their budget. At first it was emergencies, then recurring support. Mom asked if I could cover their home insurance premium. 1 year, $3,480. Then Dad asked if I could handle the quarterly property tax reserve. Then I paid their electricity during a particularly expensive summer. Then their internet, because Mom said she was tired of remembering passwords. Eventually, without any formal conversation, I was sending them $1,450 every month. Not always directly. Some bills came to me. Some I paid automatically. Some money went into an account Mom used for household costs. I knew it was too much. But each expense had a story. Dad's pension paperwork was delayed. Mom's hours had been cut. The motorhome needed repairs. The insurance renewal was higher. Lucas needed them too. The grandkids needed things. There was always a reason. One Christmas, Helen asked what I was doing for the holidays. Going to my parents? You sound excited. I am. She looked at me over her glasses. You just said that like a hostage reading a statement. I laughed. Then she asked, How much are you spending? On Christmas? On your family. I didn't answer. Because I knew. That year alone, I had paid $17,860 in family expenses. Christmas gifts were not included. By 38, the family support spreadsheet showed $91,340. Some had been repaid, most had not. Lucas's restaurant had received another $6,500 indirectly when I covered my parents' bills so they could help him. I only learned that later. Still, I kept going. Why? Because I was single. That mattered more to my family than anyone admitted. Lucas had a wife, children, a business. My parents spoke about his expenses as if they were automatically meaningful. Mine were optional because there was only one person attached to them. When I bought a $2,200 sofa after using the same one for 11 years, Mom said, Well, somebody's treating herself. 3 weeks later, she asked me for $1,900 toward motorhome repairs. When I took a 6-day trip to Vancouver, Dad joked, Must be nice. The previous year, I had paid $5,600 toward their household expenses, while they spent 10 days in Florida. I did not say anything. That was my pattern. Notice, absorb, continue. The person who eventually changed that was my grandmother. Not in person. She had been dead for 7 years. After Mom decided to renovate the guest bedroom, she asked me to come over and help move furniture. Inside a closet, I found one of the old Navy photo albums. 1997. The year I turned 13. I sat on the floor and opened it. There I was. Braces, huge sweatshirt, awful haircut. A photograph of me helping Dad repaint the porch. Another of me holding Lucas's science fair board. Another beside Mom on Mother's Day. Then I found a photograph I remembered clearly. The 4 of us standing in front of our old station wagon before a trip to Washington, D.C., on the back in my mother's handwriting. Our whole world. I stared at those words. Our whole world. There was a time before money became the measure of my usefulness. I slipped the photograph back into the album. Mom appeared at the bedroom door. What are you doing? Looking? She smiled. You were such a serious child. I was 13. You acted 40. She laughed. Then, without transition, while you're here, can I ask you something about the mortgage? That was the moment something inside me became tired. Not angry. Tired. Even nostalgia had become a bridge to a request. I closed the album. How much? Mom hesitated. $8,000. I stared at her. For what? There's a shortage. $8,000 is not a shortage. It's a problem. She stiffened. Your father is handling it. Then why are you asking me? Natalie? No, explain it. Eventually, she did. Sort of. Their mortgage payment had risen after another escrow adjustment. Dad's retirement income was lower than expected. They had also taken a home equity loan 2 years earlier. How much? Mum looked away. 32,000? For what? You know, things. What things? The motorhome, some housework. And silence. Mom, we helped Lucas. There it was. How much? I don't know exactly. You know exactly. She sat on the edge of the bed. 22. $22,000? He was going to lose the restaurant. I stood. So you borrowed against your house to give Lucas $22,000. It wasn't all at once. That somehow makes it better? Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. I'm trying to understand why you need $8,000 from me because you borrowed $22,000 for Lucas. Mom's eyes filled. He has children. There it was again. The exemption. He made a bad business decision. He's your brother. And she looked genuinely shocked. And family helps. I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, how much have I helped? Her expression changed. What is that supposed to mean? Do you know? You've done plenty. How much? Natalie, I'm not keeping a spreadsheet. I am. She stared at me. For the first time, I saw something like fear. Not fear that she had hurt me. Fear that I had counted. I went home. That night, I opened the family support file. I spent 3 hours reconciling everything. Bank transfers, checks, credit card payments, utilities, insurance, money to Lucas, money to my parents, the mortgage shortfalls, the motorhome repairs, the vacations I had indirectly subsidized by paying bills while they traveled. I did not count gifts. I did not count meals. I did not count little things, only documented financial support. The total was $138,417. I stared at it. Then I calculated the amount from the previous 12 months. $21,380. I made a second column. What had my parents reduced during those years? Motorhome? No. Club membership? No. Travel? No. Restaurant support for Lucas? No. I had not been helping them survive. I had been helping them avoid choosing. The following morning, I called Dad. I'm stopping the monthly support. Silence. What do you mean? The $1,450. I'm stopping it next month. Natalie, your mother said you were upset. I'm not doing this because I'm upset. Then why? Because you're borrowing against your house to fund Lucas while I'm paying your normal bills. Dad exhaled. It isn't that simple. It is exactly that simple. His business was in trouble. So you made your house part of the restaurant. He has a family. And you have retirement. Silence. I'm not telling you what to do with your money, I said. I'm telling you I'm not replacing whatever money you give away. Dad's voice changed. Cooler. So that's it. That's it. After everything we've done for you, there it was. The invoice for childhood. I almost asked for the amount. Instead, I said, I love you. The payments stop next month. I cancelled the automatic transfers. I removed my card from their utility accounts. I changed the insurance bill back to their mailing address. I stopped paying the quarterly property reserve. I sent Dad a clean list of every bill that would become their responsibility and the next due dates. No surprises, no revenge, no shut-offs, no drama, 30 days. That was the first cutoff, not the final one. The punishment began almost immediately. At first, it was silence. Mom stopped calling. Dad answered texts with one word. Lucas did not speak to me at all. The family group chat, usually full of photographs of my nephews, went quiet. Then I discovered there was another group chat. Aunt Vivian told me accidentally. She texted, "Are you coming Sunday, or are you still staying away from family things?" I answered, "What's Sunday?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Your parents' cookout." I assumed you knew. I did not. That was the beginning. Birthdays, cookouts, a weekend lake trip, Lucas's son's school celebration. I stopped getting invited. When relatives asked why, Mom apparently said, "Natalie needs space." I had never asked for space. Then it became, "Natalie is focused on her career right now." Then she has different priorities. Then, you know how people change when money becomes important to them? The story was being edited, and I was becoming the villain in a version of events nobody had asked me to tell. One evening, Aunt Vivian came to my apartment carrying Peach Cobbler. She was Dad's older sister, 71, retired librarian, quiet, observant, the sort of woman who could make somebody uncomfortable simply by remembering what they said last year. She set the cobbler on my counter. "I'm not here to mediate." Good. I hate mediating. Also good. She sat down. "Your mother says you cut them off because they helped Lucas." That's incomplete. I thought so. I showed her the spreadsheet. Not every page, just the summary. Her glasses slid slightly down her nose. She stared at the total. 138,000? Over about 11 years. Does Lucas know? I don't know. Does your father? He knows I helped. I don't think he ever added it up. Aunt Vivian sat back. Then she said, "This family has a habit of treating quiet people like they agreed." That sentence stayed with me. She told me something else. Mom had started assembling material for their 50th anniversary. It was still almost a year away. A ballroom had been reserved. There would be a printed family history booklet, video interviews, old photographs. Mum was pulling material from all those Navy albums. I smiled despite everything. She's been planning that party since their 40th. Aunt Vivian did not smile. She asked me for childhood photographs of Lucas. Okay, she did not ask for any of you. I looked at her. Maybe she has enough. Maybe. Her voice told me she didn't believe that. Neither did I. Over the next 6 months, the separation deepened. I stopped chasing. That was new. Old Natalie would have called Mom after 2 weeks, sent flowers, offered dinner, found a softer way to explain the same boundary. I did none of that. At Christmas, I received a card. A photograph of my parents, Lucas, Kayla, and the children wearing matching green sweaters. Across the bottom, Brooks Family Christmas. I turned it over. Nothing. No handwritten note. No, we miss you. Just a printed card sent to my address like I was a former coworker. I put it inside the 1997 Navy photo album I had taken from Mom's house, with her permission, months earlier. Beside the picture labeled, "Our Whole World." The contrast was almost funny. Pictures prove who showed up. Apparently, pictures could also prove who had been removed. In January, Dad called. First real conversation in 4 months. He did not ask how I was. He asked if I could cover their annual homeowner's insurance, $4,860. I actually thought I had misheard. Dad, I stopped paying household bills. I know. So why are you asking? Because this one is large. That doesn't make it mine. We're a little tight. Then sell the motorhome. He went quiet. We're not selling the motorhome over an insurance bill. Then you've made your choice. You can afford it. There are few sentences more dangerous in a family than that one. You can afford it. It removes choice. If capacity becomes obligation, then every responsible decision you have ever made belongs to somebody less responsible. Yes, I said. I can afford it. Dad sounded relieved. Then I finished. And I'm not paying it. He hung up. 2 weeks later, Lucas called. Are you trying to punish Mom and Dad? No. Dad says you told them to sell the RV. Motorhome. Whatever. They asked me to pay insurance. I said if they can't afford the house, they need to reduce expenses. You know how scared Mom gets about money. I know. You're making it worse. No. Their expenses are making it worse. He laughed sharply. You've always been jealous of me. That surprised me enough that I said nothing. He continued. You think because Mom and Dad helped me with the restaurant, you were somehow cheated. Lucas, they borrowed against their house to give you $22,000 while I was paying their bills. So this is about money. Yes, he went quiet. Apparently, he had expected me to deny it. I continued. It is absolutely about money. Specifically, whose money pays for whose decisions. He called me cold. I called the conversation finished. 3 months later, Aunt Vivian sent me a photograph. It was a draft page from the anniversary booklet. At the top, the Brooks family story. Below that was a family tree. Marlene plus Frank. A line descended to Lucas Brooks plus Kayla Brooks. Then their 2 children. That was it. My finger stayed on the screen. I zoomed in. Maybe there was another page. Maybe the photograph had been cropped. I called Aunt Vivian. Is this the entire family tree? Yes. Did you ask Mom? Yes. What did she say? A long pause. She said the booklet is focusing on the family that remained close. I laughed. I wish I could say it did not hurt, because by then I understood exactly what was happening. It hurt. There is something uniquely cruel about being erased by people who once documented every year of your childhood. I thought of the albums, birthday candles, school pictures, Christmas mornings, my mother's handwriting, our whole world. And now the official family story began with my parents and skipped directly to Lucas. My aunt said quietly, Natalie, I'm here. Do you want me to say something? No. You sure? Yes. Because by then I had learned something. If a person is willing to remove you from a family tree to punish you for financial boundaries, arguing for your place on the page will not put you back in the family. It only proves they still control the pen. I saved the image, created a folder, anniversary. Then I went to work. If you have ever watched your family rewrite history, the moment you stopped being useful, tell me what changed first. Was it the invitations, the phone calls, the photographs, the way they described you to relatives? And if you've ever been told you changed when what really changed was your willingness to finance everybody else, subscribe. Sometimes the clearest betrayal is not what people take from you. It is what they say you became when you stopped giving it. The anniversary invitation arrived 6 weeks later. Heavy cream cardstock, gold lettering, Frank and Marlene Brooks. 50 years together, Saturday, October 14th, the Grand Waverly Hotel. Cocktails at 6, dinner at 7. At the bottom, handwritten by Dad. Hope you'll come. I stared at it. For a moment I thought maybe things had shifted. Then Aunt Vivian called. Did you get the invitation? Yes. So did everyone. Okay. Natalie, there is something you need to know. I closed my eyes. What? The hotel balance isn't paid. I actually laughed. How do you know? Your father told Mark he thought you were handling the rest. Why would he think that? Apparently you paid the deposit 2 years ago. I had forgotten. Before the cutoff? Before the home equity discovery. Mum had asked me to secure the ballroom because the hotel required a $6,000 non-refundable deposit. At the time, she promised they would save for the remaining cost. I paid it. Another family expense swallowed by time. How much is left? Almost $19,000. I looked at the invitation again. Hope you'll come. Suddenly it sounded less sentimental. Did Dad say I agreed to pay? No. He said, Natalie knows how important this is to her mother. That sentence could have been carved on our family crest. I called the hotel. Not to interfere, to clarify. I spoke to an event coordinator named Brooke. I gave her the event number. Yes, she said, we have the initial deposit from you. Am I contractually listed as responsible for the remaining balance? She reviewed the file. No, the agreement is under Frank and Marlene Brooks. Your card was used for the initial deposit only. Is my card still authorized for future charges? Another pause. It appears we still have the payment token from the original deposit, but we would not process the remaining balance without authorization. Please note that I do not authorize additional charges. Absolutely. I asked her to send confirmation by email. She did. I printed it. Added it to the anniversary folder. Then I did something harder. Nothing. I did not call my parents. I did not warn them. I had already spent years giving warnings. If they had planned a $32,000 anniversary party without enough money to pay for it, that was information they already possessed. I bought a dress. Dark blue? Simple. I RSVP'd yes. 3 days before the party, Aunt Vivian came over. She brought the finished anniversary booklet. I stole this, she said. You stole it? Borrowed aggressively. She handed it to me. The cover was beautiful. Embossed gold lettering. A photograph of my parents at 22. Inside were 56 pages. Their childhoods, wedding, first apartment, first house. Lucas's birth. I stopped. Turned the page. Lucas at 3, Lucas at 7, Lucas's high school graduation, my parents' 25th anniversary, the family vacations. In one beach photograph, I knew I had originally been standing beside Dad. The photograph had been cropped. I could still see part of my arm. That hurt more than the missing family tree, because absence could be explained. Cropping required effort. I kept turning. There were 3 photographs from Christmases I had paid to host. One showed the dining room table in my old house. My table, my decorations, my food. My chair was outside the crop. The caption read, Family traditions continue. I closed the booklet. Aunt Vivian watched me. You okay? No. Good. I looked at her. She shrugged. It would be strange if you were. I laughed. Then she placed a flash drive beside the booklet. What's this? Your mother asked me to help scan old photographs. I stared. She deleted a folder called Natalie. My chest tightened. I recovered the files from the trash before I gave the drive back. There were 312 photographs. My childhood, my graduation, family trips, birthdays, me standing beside Lucas when Oak and Ember opened, me with my parents at Dad's retirement dinner, me beside Mom after her dental surgery, me and my nephews decorating Christmas cookies. Not forgotten, removed. That distinction mattered. I copied the folder. Then I created 3 documents. The first was the family support summary. Updated total, $146,930. That included the $6,000 anniversary deposit. The second was a timeline. Not emotional, not editorial, just dates, requests, payments, the cutoff, the home equity discovery, the cancelled invitations, the alternate family chat, the draft family tree, the anniversary booklet. The third was 1 page. At the top I wrote, "What changed?" Before June 3rd, regular invitations, weekly calls, family photographs, requests for financial assistance. After June 3rd, financial support ended, invitations declined, communication reduced. Natalie removed from anniversary family tree and photo history. At the bottom, nothing about my relationship with this family changed on June 3rd, except the money. I printed 3 copies, 1 for me, 1 for my father, 1 for my mother. I had no plan to stand up and distribute them. I hoped I would not use them at all. That is important. I did not go to the anniversary looking for revenge. I went because some small part of me still needed to see whether my parents could look me in the face after erasing me. The ballroom was beautiful. White flowers, gold candles, a string quartet near the entrance. The giant banner covered 1 wall. 27 photographs. None of me. Beside it stood a display table with 3 navy photo albums. Not the originals, reproductions, selected family history. There were place cards at every table. Lucas and Kayla sat at table 1. Aunt Vivian at table 2. I was at table 9, near the service doors. People noticed. Of course they noticed. Families pretend not to notice hierarchy, only when admitting it would require courage. Cousin Rachel hugged me. "I didn't know if you'd come." Neither did I. She looked toward the banner. Her face changed. "Natalie, it's okay." It wasn't, but I did not want sympathy before dinner. Mom found me 15 minutes later. Cream envelope. Hotel invoice. "You came." "I was invited." "Well, since you're here, there is one thing you can do." I opened the envelope. $18,740. "Natalie will handle final payment." I looked at her. Then at the banner. "You removed me from the entire display." "Natalie, please don't start. You printed 50 years of family history, and somehow I was never born. You chose to distance yourself. I stopped paying your bills. To us, there wasn't much difference." There it was. The truth. Clean, unplanned. I folded the invoice once. "Who wrote that I would handle this?" "Your father." "Did either of you ask me?" Mom's eyes sharpened. "You paid the deposit?" 2 years ago. You know how important tonight is. It was important enough to remove me. "Oh, for God's sake. Are we really doing this here?" "No." I handed the invoice back. "You are." She did not take it. "Natalie, I'm not paying this." Her face changed. Not surprise, anger. "I knew you would do this. You knew I would refuse a bill I never agreed to. You knew we were counting on you." "That is not the same thing. You have more than enough." I almost smiled. There it was again. Capacity as consent? I'm not paying. I placed the invoice on the display table, beside the book that said I did not exist. Then I walked into the ballroom. Dinner began. For 90 minutes, nobody said anything. Dad gave a speech. He talked about meeting Mom at 19. Their first apartment. Hard years, good years. Lucas was seated beside him. Dad pointed toward his grandchildren and said, "This is what 50 years gives you. A family that carries your story forward." I looked at Aunt Vivian. She looked at me. Mom gave her speech next. She talked about sacrifice, about loyalty, about the people who stay. That phrase landed. Several relatives looked toward my table. Mom continued, "Family is not about what you have. It's about what you are willing to give." I almost admired it. Almost. Because I had given them $146,930 and been edited out of the evidence. Then the anniversary video started. Old photographs filled the screen. My parents as children. Wedding, baby Lucas, holidays, vacations, grandchildren. Not one photograph of me. At minute 8, the video showed Christmas at my home. The caption, "Our family gathered together." 2019. They had cropped me out. Again, I heard Aunt Vivian whisper, "That is disgusting." I stayed seated. The video ended. Applause. Then Brooke, the hotel coordinator, appeared near the ballroom door. She spoke quietly to Dad. His expression changed. He looked toward me. Then he walked to my table. "Natalie." I looked up. "Can I talk to you?" "Sure." "Outside?" "No." His jaw tightened. "This is private." "Then ask me later." He leaned down. "The hotel needs the balance." "I know. Your mother said she spoke with you." "She did." "And?" I said no. Dad stared. "Natalie, we cannot do this tonight." "I'm not doing anything." "The card needs to be authorized." "No." He lowered his voice further. "We have 200 people here." 112? "What?" I counted. His eyes closed briefly. "Can you please just take care of it? We'll sort it out afterward." There it was, the family method. Pay now. Discuss never. I already paid $6,000 toward tonight. "We know." Apparently not enough to make the slideshow. "Natalie." "No." His voice hardened. "This is your mother's 50th anniversary. It's yours too. Don't be smart." "I'm not." People at nearby tables were pretending not to listen. Dad knew it. So did I. Then he made the mistake that changed the evening. He straightened, raised his voice slightly, and said, "You stopped helping us months ago. Fine. But tonight is bigger than your resentment." The room closest to us went quiet, not the entire ballroom. Enough. I looked at him. "You want to do this publicly? I want you to stop using money to punish this family." Aunt Vivian stood. "Frank." He ignored her. Maybe he was embarrassed, maybe afraid, maybe after months of telling everyone I had chosen money over family, he had started believing his own explanation. Dad looked at me. "You have always cared more about keeping score than keeping people together." That was the quote. The one designed to become the story. The ungrateful daughter. The rich daughter. The daughter who refused one bill and ruined her parents' anniversary. I reached under my chair, pulled out the anniversary folder, and set it on the table. Not angrily, quietly. Dad looked at it. "What is that?" "The score you keep talking about." Mom had come over now. Lucas too. I opened the folder. First page, family support, documented total, $146,930. I turned it toward Dad. His face changed. Mom stared. Lucas leaned closer. I said, "That is what I have paid toward this family since I was 28. It does not include normal gifts, meals, or small expenses. It includes documented transfers, bills, support to you, support to Lucas, and the $6,000 deposit for tonight." Mom whispered, "Put that away." "No. You're embarrassing us. I'm answering Dad's accusation." Dad looked around. "Natalie, lower your voice." "My voice is lower than yours." That silenced him. I slid the second page forward. "Last year, I discovered you borrowed $32,000 against your house and gave approximately $22,000 of it to Lucas's restaurant, while I was paying $1,450 a month toward your household expenses." Lucas interrupted. "That money had nothing to do with you." "Exactly." He frowned and I continued. "So I stopped replacing it." Mom crossed her arms. "You abandoned us." "No, I returned your expenses to you. You knew we were struggling." "I knew you were choosing not to reduce spending." Dad's face reddened. "This isn't the place. You made it the place when you accused me in front of people." Aunt Vivian sat very still. Cousin Rachel had stopped pretending not to listen. I opened the finished anniversary booklet. I turned to the family tree, placed it beside the spreadsheet. After I stopped paying, this is what changed. Mom looked away. I turned another page. The cropped beach photograph. Another. Christmas at my house. Another. The family timeline that omitted my birth entirely. Lucas looked at Mom. "Seriously?" That surprised me. Mom snapped, "Don't." I looked at him. "You didn't know?" He shook his head. "I knew you weren't in some of the stuff. I didn't know they cut you out of everything." Mom said she stopped participating in the family. Aunt Vivian finally spoke. "No, Marlene, you stopped inviting her." Mom turned. "Vivian, stay out of this." "I've stayed out of it for almost a year." Aunt Vivian stood. "You told people Natalie needed space. You created a second group chat. You stopped inviting her to birthdays, and then you removed her from a family tree because she stopped paying your bills." A silence spread across the surrounding tables. Mom's face went white. Dad looked at Aunt Vivian. "You have no idea what's been happening." "I know exactly what's been happening. I'm one of the people you've been explaining it to." That was the first time I felt the room shift. Until then, I had been the accused daughter defending herself. Now there was a witness. Not an emotional ally. A witness. Mom looked at me. "You planned this." "No." "You brought documents to our anniversary." "Yes." "That means you planned it." "I brought them because you had already rewritten what happened." I picked up the hotel invoice, the one that said, "Natalie will handle final payment." Then I placed it on top of the anniversary booklet. "That is tonight in one picture." Nobody spoke. I pointed to the booklet. "I don't exist here." Then the invoice. "But I exist here." That landed harder than anything else I could have said. Mom's mouth opened, closed. Dad sat down in the empty chair beside me. Lucas stared at the documents. And for the first time in my adult life, nobody had a softer version available. I did not make a speech. I did not demand apologies. I did not tell the room every ugly thing that had happened. I said one thing. I will not pay $18,740 to finance a celebration of a family that removed me from its own history. Then I closed the folder. Brooke, the event coordinator, was standing several yards away, pretending very professionally not to hear. Dad rubbed his face. What happens now? It was an extraordinary question. Not because it was complicated. Because after 15 years, my parents finally had to ask what happened when I did not pay. I answered, "You pay your bill." Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at Lucas. Lucas looked away. That was the status flip. Nothing exploded. Nobody was ruined. No one was destroyed. The bill simply remained attached to the people who had ordered the event. Exactly where it belonged. If you have ever been called selfish, only after you stopped being financially useful, this is the part I want you to remember. Boundaries can feel dramatic inside a family that benefited from your lack of them, even when all you are doing is putting each bill back beside the person who created it. Tell me in the comments if you have ever watched people rewrite your character because your wallet finally closed. And subscribe if you believe quiet justice is not about revenge. It is about letting consequences find the correct address. The party continued, awkwardly. The hotel did not shut down the ballroom. My parents arranged payment. Later, I learned Dad used a credit card for $10,000, and Lucas covered $5,000. Mom wrote a check for the remainder. For the first time I could remember, the three people who created an expense divided it among themselves. Imagine that. I left before the final dance. Aunt Vivian walked me to my car. "You okay?" "No." She nodded. "Good answer." I laughed weakly. Then I started crying, right there beside my car. Not because I regretted refusing, because somewhere inside me had still hoped my parents would see me at that party and remember I was their daughter before they remembered what I used to pay. Aunt Vivian held me. "I don't understand how they could remove me from those pictures." She rubbed my back. "They didn't remove you from what happened." "I know." "Do you?" I looked at her. She pointed toward the hotel. "That book is paper. Their version is paper. You were there. You lived it. You paid for half of it, apparently." I laughed through tears. Then she said, "People rewrite history when the real version makes them ashamed." That became the sentence I carried home. Monday morning, I completed the final separation. The first cut-off months earlier had stopped the monthly transfer, but several family expenses still ran through systems I managed. Mum's cell phone remained on a family plan I had opened years before. Their roadside assistance renewed through my card. Dad's storage unit, a streaming package, an annual pest control plan. Small things. The leftovers of 15 years of being useful. I made a list. Then I sent my parents an email. No anger, no accusation. Effective November 1st, I will no longer administer or pay any recurring household expense on your behalf. Below are the accounts currently connected to me and the dates by which billing information must be updated. Phone plan, storage unit, roadside service, pest control, 2 subscription services. I gave them 30 days. Then I changed nothing until the deadline. No revenge cancellation, no surprise. On November 1st, I removed myself. The final monthly cost was only $386. But emotionally, it was enormous. There was nothing left. No invisible thread where they could still say, "But Natalie handles that." I did not handle it. That became my favorite sentence. Mom sent one email. "I hope you're happy." I did not answer. Dad called twice. I let voicemail take it. Lucas texted, "I think everybody needs time." I wrote, "Agreed." Then I put my phone down. The following months were quieter than any period of my adult life. At first, that quiet felt like rejection. Then it started feeling like space. I realized how often I had been anticipating requests. Every phone call from Mom had carried a small physical reaction in me. What happened? How much? Who needs what? Now my phone could ring and just be a phone. I started spending differently too. Not wildly, intentionally. I replaced the mattress I had complained about for 4 years. $1,780. I hired someone to repaint my living room instead of doing it myself over 3 exhausting weekends. $1,250. I joined a pottery class on Thursday nights. $280 for 6 weeks. The first bowl I made leaned visibly to one side. Helen bought it from me for $5. "You're my first customer," I told her. "I've overpaid." "You have." She kept it on her desk anyway. One afternoon at work, she asked, "How's your family?" "Which version?" She raised an eyebrow. I told her about the anniversary booklet, the photographs, the invoice, the confrontation. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked, "Do you want them back?" The question surprised me. My family? The relationship. I sat quietly. I want something back. That wasn't my question. Helen was irritating like that. I want parents who wouldn't do what they did. She nodded. Different thing. Yes, it was. That distinction helped. I stopped measuring healing by whether my parents called. I stopped rehearsing what I would say if Mom apologized. I stopped checking the family group chat I was no longer in. And I did something with the old albums. I bought a scanner. For 3 weekends, I digitized every photograph in the 1997 album Aunt Vivian had helped me keep. Then she brought me more. She had borrowed them from Dad. Aggressively, she said. I scanned everything, not just pictures of me. All of us. Because I was not interested in creating the opposite lie. Lucas was part of my childhood. My parents were part of my childhood. Good Christmases happened. Beach vacations happened. Dad taught me to drive. Mom stayed awake with me the night before my first major job interview because I was terrified. Love happened, so did exploitation. One truth did not erase the other. That is what my parents had failed to understand. They believed if I refused the role they preferred, they had to rewrite the entire relationship so their punishment looked justified. I did not need to do that. I could remember accurately. A year passed. Then something changed. Not with Mom, with Lucas. He called one evening. I almost did not answer. We had exchanged birthday texts. Nothing more. Natalie? Hi. Can I come over? Why? He laughed awkwardly. Still you? Definitely. He became serious. I need to talk to you. My first instinct was money. Of course it was. How much? Silence. Then, that's fair. I closed my eyes. What do you need? Nothing, money-wise. I let him come. He arrived holding a banker's box. That did not inspire confidence. We sat at my dining table. He opened it. Inside were restaurant records, tax documents, loan statements, vendor notices. Oak and Ember had closed 6 months earlier. I knew that. What I did not know was how bad the final numbers had been. Lucas owed more than $96,000 across business obligations and personal guarantees. He and Kayla had sold their larger SUV. They had refinanced nothing. They were working through the mess slowly. I looked at him. I'm not giving you money. I know. Good. I came to tell you something. He rubbed his hands together. Mom and Dad gave me more than $22,000. I waited. How much? 41. I stared at him. 41,000? Over 3 years? From where? Some from the home equity loan, some from savings, some, I think, from what you were sending them. That last part landed quietly. How? He looked ashamed. There were months Mom would say you'd helped with the house, so they could help me with payroll. I sat back. There it was. The indirect transfer. I had known in theory. Hearing it from him felt different. Lucas continued. I didn't think about it like taking your money. Of course not. I'm serious. I know. That's the problem. He looked down. I thought they had money because they always helped. They had money because sometimes I helped them. I know that now. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Lucas slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check. $2,000. What is this? Not even close to what I owe you. You don't owe me $41,000. I owe you something. Why now? His eyes filled. That surprised me. Because after the anniversary, Mom kept saying you chose money over us. I stayed still. And I believed her. He swallowed. Then the restaurant closed. And suddenly, Mom and Dad couldn't help anymore. And I got angry at them. He gave a short, embarrassed laugh. I said, What happened? You've always helped me. I knew where this was going before he finished. Dad said Natalie stopped covering things. There it was. The family system confessed accidentally. Lucas wiped his eye. I think that was the first time I understood. I did not make it easy for him. Understood what? That some of what I thought was Mom and Dad saving me was you. I looked at the check. You called me jealous. I know. You told people I abandoned our parents. I know. You watched Mom remove me from the family story. I didn't know how much she removed. You saw enough. He nodded. You're right. No defense. That mattered. I'm sorry. I said nothing. Lucas continued. I was the favorite. It was strange hearing him say it. I didn't ask to be. I know. But I used it. I looked at him. Yes. He nodded. Yeah. That was the beginning of the only reconciliation I allowed. Slow, limited, earned. Not because he brought $2,000. Because, for once, he arrived without requiring me to deny reality so he could feel better. I took the check. Not because I needed it. Because refusing it would have turned his accountability into another form of my caretaking. He paid me another $150 2 months later. Then skipped a month. Then $200. I never reminded him. I never asked. Eventually, I told him to stop after he had repaid $4,100. You need to rebuild your own life. Are you sure? Yes. He smiled. Look at you, giving money away again. No, I'm cancelling a receivable. He laughed. That sounded like us. Not the childhood version. Something new. Mom and Dad remained different. Dad occasionally texted. Birthday, Christmas. Once a photograph of the first snowfall. Mom did not contact me directly for almost 18 months. Then Aunt Vivian called. Your father is selling the motorhome. I smiled. Good. They're leaving the club too. Okay. They've listed the house. That surprised me. Why? They want something smaller. I sat quietly. The large house had become expensive. The home equity loan still existed. Taxes had risen. Without me absorbing the overflow, they finally had to match their lifestyle to their income. Aunt Vivian asked, "Do you feel vindicated?" I thought about it. No. Good. Why good? Because downsizing isn't punishment. It's arithmetic. She always had the best lines. My parents sold the house for enough to clear the mortgage and home equity balance and buy a smaller townhouse with a manageable payment. The motorhome sold too. Dad apparently complained for 3 months, then discovered he liked not maintaining it. Reality was not fatal. That was another lesson. For years, everyone had treated saying no to my parents as though it would push them into disaster. Instead, they adjusted. The same way adults do every day. The crisis existed mostly inside our family habits. About 2 years after the anniversary, a package arrived. No return name. I recognized Dad's handwriting. Inside was a Navy photo album. 2000. The year I graduated high school. There was also an envelope. I opened it. "Natalie, I have started this letter 6 times. Your mother does not know I'm sending it, and I am not asking you to keep that secret. I just don't want to pretend I speak for her. You were right about the money. More importantly, you were right about what we did after. I let your mother tell people you had pulled away because it was easier than admitting why you pulled away. I let her remove your photographs from the anniversary because I was angry and embarrassed. I told myself it was her project. That was cowardice. You were our daughter before you ever paid a bill. We treated your help like proof of love, and when the help stopped, we acted like the love had stopped too. I am sorry. The album has the photographs from your graduation year. None are missing. Dad." I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Then I opened the album. Prom. Graduation. Me and Lucas fighting over a garden hose. Mum holding my face between both hands on my birthday. Dad standing beside me outside my first job. Page after page. Evidence. Not that we had always been good to one another. Evidence that I had existed. That I had belonged before anybody knew my credit limit. I cried. Then I called Dad. He answered on the second ring. "Hi. Hi. I got the album." Silence. "Okay. Thank you." His voice shook. "I'm sorry, Nat." He had not called me Nat in years. "I know. I should have stopped it." "Yes. I should have called you before the anniversary." "Yes. I should have." "Dad." He stopped. "I'm not ready to pretend everything is normal." "I know. But I appreciate the letter." "Okay." That was our reconciliation. Limited, no instant holidays, no weekly dinners, no erasing what happened, because somebody finally apologized. Dad and I began having coffee occasionally. Public places at first, then my house. He never asked me for money again. That mattered. Mum remained distant. Dad never pressured me to forgive her. That mattered too. Several months later, he brought me a box. Inside were copies of the anniversary booklet. "I thought you might want one." I stared at him. "The book that erased me?" He looked embarrassed. "No." He reached inside. A revised version. Same cream cover. Same gold lettering. I opened it. Page 1. Wedding. First apartment. Then 1984. Natalie arrives. A baby photograph. Me. 3 years later. 1987. Lucas completes the family. I turn the pages. No heroic rewrite. No attempt to make me central. Just accurate. Graduation. Christmas. Family trips. Lucas's wedding. My career. The grandchildren. Everybody. At the family tree. Frank plus Marlene. 2 lines. Natalie. Lucas plus Kayla. I stared at it. Who did this? I did. Mom. She knows. That wasn't my question. Dad looked down. No, she didn't help. I nodded. That was okay. Because his apology did not require her participation to be real. I kept the revised book, not because I needed a printed object to prove I was family. Because accountability also deserves a record. The original anniversary booklet sits beside it on my shelf. People sometimes ask why I kept both. Because memory becomes dangerous when we only preserve the version that makes us comfortable. One book says, this is what they did. The other says, this is what one person eventually admitted. Both are true. I never resumed financial support. Not the old way. When Dad turned 75, I bought him a good watch, a gift. When his car needed tires, he told me about it during coffee. He did not ask. I did not offer. He bought the tires. Our relationship survived. Imagine that. Lucas eventually found work, managing operations for a regional catering company. He was good at it. Better, probably, because closing his restaurant had finally taught him that confidence and cash flow are not the same skill. He and Kayla stayed together. Their children got older. I started receiving invitations again, not from Mom, from Lucas, birthday dinners, soccer games, one Christmas. I went to some, declined others. Nobody demanded explanations. My nephew once asked why I wasn't in the big anniversary video from years earlier. The room went quiet. Lucas looked at me. I looked at him. Then I said, your grandparents and I were having a disagreement then. He accepted that instantly. Children often need less mythology than adults. Later, Lucas thanked me for not telling him everything. He'll understand more when he's older. Maybe. You could have made Mom look terrible. I looked at him. She made herself look terrible. He nodded. Fair. But I don't need him carrying it. That was the difference between accountability and revenge. I did not need future generations to hate my mother in order for my experience to be true. I only needed the adults involved to stop lying about it. My finances changed too. When the family support ended, I redirected the old $1,450 monthly transfer automatically. At first into retirement, then investments, then a travel account. Over 3 years, even with vacations and home expenses, the difference became substantial. Not just in money, in choices. I reduced my work week eventually. 4 longer days instead of 5. I took Fridays for myself. Sometimes pottery, sometimes errands, sometimes absolutely nothing. Helen retired. I gave her a new bowl before she left. It leaned less than the first one. She inspected it. Progress. High praise. At her retirement dinner, she asked me, "Whatever happened with the family history thing?" I smiled. "I got reprinted?" She stared. "People are exhausting." "Yes." "Are you happy?" I thought about it. More accurate. She raised her glass. To accuracy. I raised mine. That felt right. Because happiness was never really the ending. Accuracy was. Knowing what happened, knowing what I gave, knowing why the relationship changed, knowing I had not become selfish simply because the money stopped, knowing that the people who loved my usefulness were not necessarily loving me. There is grief in learning that. But there is freedom too. Years later, I opened the old 1997 album again. The station wagon photograph was still there. Mom's handwriting on the back. Our whole world. For a long time, those words made me sad. Now they make me smile. Because they were true when she wrote them. I was part of her world. Then money complicated the relationship. Fear complicated it. Favoritism, habit, shame, entitlement. People can love you and still mistreat you. That is one of the hardest adult truths to hold. We want villains to be villains every day. We want love to prove innocence. Families are messier than that. My mother loved me. I believe that. She also allowed my financial usefulness to become part of the price of belonging. When I stopped paying, she punished me by withdrawing the belonging. Both things can be true. Dad loved me. He also stood beside her, because confronting her would have been harder than letting me absorb the damage. Lucas loved me. He also benefited from the system and defended it until the system stopped benefiting him. I loved all of them. And for years I used money to keep relationships functioning that should have been required to stand without it. That was my part. Not their choices. Mine. I do not regret helping when I genuinely wanted to help. I regret every yes I gave because I was afraid a no would make me less loved. Because eventually, I learned something I wish I had understood at 28. If saying no makes someone erase you, the no did not destroy the relationship. It revealed the terms. Today, I keep the 2 anniversary books on the same shelf as the Navy albums. The erased version, the corrected version. Beside them is the original $18,740 hotel invoice. Yes, I kept that too. Across the bottom, Natalie will handle final payment. Sometimes I look at it and laugh, because for most of my adult life, those 4 words described my role perfectly. Natalie will handle it. The tax bill, the insurance, Lucas's emergency, the roof, the vacation shortage, the restaurant problem, the Christmas dinner, the anniversary deposit. Natalie will handle it. Nobody ever wrote, Natalie will be asked, Natalie will be considered, Natalie will be protected, Natalie will be remembered. Just Natalie will handle it. Until I didn't. And that was when my parents removed me from their family story. At first, I thought being erased was the punishment. It wasn't. The punishment would have been spending the rest of my life buying my way back onto the page. I refused. And eventually, one person picked up the pen and wrote the truth. Not because I paid him. Not because I rescued him. Not because he needed something. Because I was his daughter. That was all I had wanted the entire time. These days I have my own photo albums. Not many. I'm not as dedicated as Mom. There are photographs of friends, Aunt Vivian, Helen, Lucas, and the children. Dad drinking terrible coffee at my kitchen table. Trips, pottery disasters, ordinary Fridays, people who showed up, people I chose. There is no rule that everyone inside has to share my last name. And there is no price of admission. Because family stories are not supposed to be accounting systems. Love is not a subscription you lose when the payments stop. Being useful is not the same thing as being cherished. Being needed is not the same thing as being loved. And sometimes the people closest to you can become the greatest strangers the moment you stop financing the version of you they preferred. My parents erased me from the family story after I cut off the money. But they could not erase what happened. They could not erase what I had given. And eventually, I stopped needing them to print my photograph to know where I belonged.